Well, hello and good evening, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Hockey Writers Live. You have reached episode 9. I am your host, Mark Scheig. A couple of days in front of Thanksgiving here in the United States. So thank you for taking time out of your day to come join us. So hopefully for the next hour or so, we're going to give you a chance to be able to kind of disconnect from the world and talk some really good hockey here. But before we get going into that, we want to just remind you to, if you're new to our show, make sure that you hit that like button, make sure that you hit on Facebook, and make sure that you hit the subscribe button on YouTube so that you don't miss an episode or any of our panels or any of our great 30 good minute segments. So before we get going here, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge, some of the news in the hockey world about, the Vegas Golden Knights. And today, several members of the Columbus Blue Jackets were diagnosed with COVID-19 positive test. And we at the Hockey Writers just want to express that everybody gets well soon, and that hopefully everybody just recovers in a very quick manner. And same with all the other teams. It's a pretty bad situation out there, so hopefully that is minimalized. But we just have all the best for everybody out there. So let's jump into this. We have a wonderful guest for 30 good minutes tonight, and somebody that I met in Erie, Pennsylvania several years ago for an Otters game, and it's just taken off from there. And we are honored to have one of the better Nashville Predators follows out there. He hosts his own radio show, among many other things, down in Nashville on 102.5 ESPN. This is Justin Bradford. Justin, welcome to the Hockey Writers Live.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you jumping on board here. So just first off, how are you doing amidst all this pandemic stuff?
It's been weird. I mean, right now it's obviously I should be getting ready for a Preds game usually, Thanksgiving week, and it's typical NHL season right now. So all we have going on in Nashville is high school hockey and then travel junior hockey. But it's been really weird to have just the mismatch of hodgepodge of sports happening and then postponements and never knowing what's going to happen and checking day to day for postponements potentially in high school games or travel games and rinks. And the one activity I'm doing is rec league hockey, is adult hockey. That's my one thing that I've chosen to do. And so just trying to be as safe as possible there to get my little bit of exercise that I possibly can. So it's been weird, but pushing through and trying to get through it.
Absolutely weird on all fronts. We'd all be in the middle of our season doing whatever. We're all pretty much stuck at home. I know I'm trying to find ways to keep in shape myself. So it's just one challenge after another, but being able to find a way to overcome that challenge. And, it's just very interesting. So now I know you have the show on Wednesday night normally. Are you still doing that right now, even though there's no hockey?
No, we are only doing it during season.
Okay.
So before the pandemic really hit hard for the rest of the country, our last show I think was March 18th. And then we picked back up 2 weeks before the rest of the season started. So it was a really long break. And then we went for just a few weeks. And the Preds, as we all know, were out pretty quickly. Yeah. And I went, so can we go through the playoffs? Because it'd be really bad if we were just on for 4 weeks and then done again. Right. So we went on for another few weeks and all the way to the draft because we want to prepare people for the other weird draft and for free agency and everything, and then we're done. So we'll be back once we actually have a season to start. We'll probably come back a week or two before the season starts.
And listen, fans, if there's a lot of stuff out there you could be listening to. I can't recommend his show enough. They do a wonderful job down there, usually on Wednesday night. You can stream it anywhere on the ESPN app. I know I do it up here. So if you get an opportunity, make sure you listen to him. Really, really good show. One of the better ones out there, especially if you need your Nashville fix. So you mentioned some of the things that you're doing to pass the time, right? So give us a sense, because we know that you're a radio host. We know you do certain other things. For those that don't know, what all do you do on a day-to-day?
So my day job formerly was with the Nashville Symphony. And it was a nonprofit in the music industry, and obviously Nashville being a hub of entertainment. Well, that kind of went on pause with the pandemic, and that Nashville Symphony still shut down. So I was furloughed back in late spring, and I was lucky enough to find a job with a company called Total Package Hockey. Yeah. And they are based in Huntsville, Alabama, but they have locations all throughout North America, including they have a base through the tri-state area with Columbus and Cincinnati, Indianapolis. Also have 2 locations in Michigan, Boston, New Jersey, down in Florida, Atlanta, 2 in Colorado, Phoenix, St. Louis. So a little bit of everywhere, especially in some good non-traditional areas when it comes to hockey and growing youth hockey. And so that's my new day job, and I'm doing public relations and content creation for them. They also manage the Nashville Junior Predators elite program, as well as the Tri-State Spartans, which is also another elite junior travel program based out of Indiana. So that's the day job right now. It's keeping me busy. And then also what we've been doing Penalty Box Radio is high school hockey's going on here in the Middle Tennessee area. And because there are still restrictions going on in the rinks, because of course we struck a deal with the high school hockey league here to stream a lot of those games. And so that's been huge for us in terms of it's a win-win scenario that I'm able to train and continue to train folks that are in high school and college on how to produce shows, how to work a camera, how to do some play-by-play, how to do public address announcing for streams. So it's continuing on with what we do, which is traditional, which is training people for their future careers. We focus a lot on that.
How do you do that in this pandemic, especially with all the challenges that you face?
Well, one, we wear a mask all the time.
Yes.
When we're around people.
Absolutely.
We are wearing masks and just doing it as carefully as possible. We've been having a lot of Zoom sessions with folks too, in terms of training and getting things up and going and focusing on doing the right things. And the good thing is, since there's limitations at these rinks, we don't feel like we're crowded where our camera is. So I'm able to have 2 people there with me. We're distanced, we have masks on, but I'm able to train them on how to use the camera. And especially because they're wearing masks, we don't have to necessarily be as concerned about breathing on each other because we're doing the right things with proper precautions. And so especially with those that are trying to get more training, prepare for a job in a very competitive industry, as we all know, it's trying to get them hands-on training right now where they typically might not be able to get that even at college if they're doing virtual learning. So it's provided a great opportunity for us, plus for parents, grandparents to be able to watch these games. So it's a win-win scenario that both sides get to win. And it's been so awesome to see people commenting of, I'm watching Nashville high school hockey from Minnesota, or I'm watching from Newfoundland, and things like this. Like people that have never been able to see their grandchild play or their niece or nephew play their high school hockey games have been able to plug into their TV and watching a broadcast on Facebook. It's not like it's the highest quality because it's one camera usually, but it's still better than nothing that they get to actually experience and watch some hockey and get to support their family members. And since most rinks only allow 2 guests and some even only allow 1 guest, it's a big opportunity for us to provide a service for them. So we've been doing a lot of that.
Absolutely. And free of charge, right?
Yes, free of charge. We've got great sponsors that have supported us to helping with this training, but that's something we really focus on is working with young people to help them get hands-on training in the business.
How does somebody, like, say they listen to this and they want to get, maybe learn more? What do they want? What should they do?
Contact me on Twitter. I mean,
at Justin B. Bradford.
Right? That is correct. I mean, I am more than happy to talk with people. I like to have open communication. It's one of those things that I may have a blue check mark, but I'm going to have discussions. I don't just push out content for the sake of pushing out content. I want to discuss and have conversations with people. And if people have a dream and want to get hands-on experience, they don't have to be high school or college. We're getting ready to launch something really big for us. And we have people that are in their 30s and 40s that are wanting to get experience that just don't know if this is what they want to do. So it's like we want to take passionate people and give them hands-on training for something that they potentially may want to do and give them the opportunity to do it. And that's what we've been doing, especially here in the Nashville area, but across the area as well, especially to cover the sports and the leagues in hockey that don't get all the coverage that they necessarily deserve. And you know that, just covering junior hockey, that there's so much more that can be done to cover all these different leagues. And you know how much they appreciate just having a feature story, some little story go out, a podcast, a 10-minute interview, something. So that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Anything that they can get to be able to do that. And when the show is done, I will actually tweet something out with a link to, his Twitter or to the website. We want to get this out there for people. So when there's an opportunity, you never want to, maybe it could be for you. We'll see. So it is Justin Bradford joining us here. And obviously he covers the Nashville Predators. So let's talk about the Nashville Predators. And as you kind of alluded to earlier, the last time that we checked in with the Predators, they were bounced rather quickly from the bubble. So when you follow them closely, you've seen what they've done in the offseason. Just what are your overall thoughts on their offseason? And do you deem it a success or is it incomplete?
Incomplete's actually a really great way to put it. Like if I was a college professor and grading it, I would say incomplete because they're so close to, I think, having something that they can be very comfortable and competitive with. And so
Mm.
if I had to give a grade right now, I'd give them a B-
Okay.
on their offseason. And the reason why I say that is I still think they're a playoff team, not necessarily a really competitive playoff team, but I still think they're built to make the playoffs as a wild card team because they addressed a few things, but there's still some things that are left to be done. The biggest thing I think for me was that they addressed the third pairing on defense.
Yeah.
And something that we all know, third pairings are like the bane of most people's existence because there's less money being spent on a third pairing. But I think they took care of a need by getting a little more physical in the third pair. They also got a little bit younger as well on the third pair. They added a good locker room presence in Mark Scheig as well, in terms of being a good human being, which is something you definitely want to see. And so I think they got a little more difficult to play against because I was very concerned if it was going to be Jared Tenorti always being on the third pairing, but having Matt Benning, and I know we'll talk about him a little bit later, and Mark Scheig, and adding them to the defensive mix is something they really needed to address. The Nick Bonino trade, I understand it. It's one of those things that he was the most tradable player for this team because of his performance, which that's saying something, that he was the most tradable player aside from the non-touchables like Roman Josi was not going to get traded. Right. But he was the most tradable player, and you get somebody young in Luke Kunin, which I know we'll discuss. And some of those moves there, you let some guys walk. I would have preferred to have Craig Smith back on a less contract, but Boston wanted to give him what he wanted. So they made some of these moves that I completely understand, and getting younger was very important. They're also leaving some holes open for some potential young players to make that jump in. So I wanted them to get younger, wanted to address the third pairing, but they're still missing that one winger that helps cement the second line, because you have Matt Duchene kind of hanging there going, hello, am I getting any help? Because the help right now that they have planned to come in is very questionable. So you have the first line, which is pretty much set, but you have Matt Duchene kind of sitting there without anyone cemented in there. Like, yeah, you could put Eeli Tolvanen there, but you don't know. You could put Luke Kunin maybe on his wing, and you never know. There's so many question marks there. Philip Tomasino, all these different players, question marks, but nothing cemented there. So I would have liked to have seen them make a move for one more if they wanted to spend the money, but it seems like they're more prepared to have that space with the cap to maybe make a move in the middle of the season if they feel like they're competitive enough and say, you know what, we're going to make a trade. We have cap space. Let's pull the trigger on it and see what happens.
So I'll throw kind of a little bit of a bonus question to you since we're talking about wingers. Mikael Granlund, what happened there?
That is a very good question, and it's a bigger question now because everyone saw what Kevin Fiala did in the playoffs for Minnesota, where he kind of put the Wild on his back, and he found a little more happiness and goal scoring capabilities there. I really think it was the problem was that he was not put in a position to succeed.
Okay.
That Glenlund was not put in a position to succeed because the types of players he's playing with were not ones that were suited for him. So he's not the kind of guy that's going to really score on the rush all the time. And so that's what they're trying to push and make him be that kind of player. And he's not the kind of player. He's more going to be the guy that's going to – they basically had 3 setup guys on a line. And you can't have 3 setup guys. Somebody needs to be a scorer, a sniper, something. And so that was one of the issues too. He wasn't put in a position to succeed. It didn't help when he, for some reason, why he's put into Peter Laviolette's system and is not successful there, and kind of moved up and down the lineup as well. So just a lot of question marks with him. Obviously, he still has plenty of talent. And I think it's one of those things that he'll find a place once they have a decision of the season, just like Hoffman and a couple other players. Just like Luke Kunin still has to sign as well. Once they announce the season start, then you'll see the rest of the dominoes fall on the free agency part. But I just think it's because his style of play didn't fit what was going to make him successful. And that's going to be so important for John Hines as a head coach. Plus, I really like the coaching moves that the Predators made. I really, really like the moves they made because you have a player's coach, you have a guy that has experience with connection, a guy that won a Stanley Cup with Tampa coming in. So I think they've made a lot of good moves in terms of coaching staff. Now it's, can they find the right players to fit and to be successful? That's always the challenge, and it's always a gamble.
Always is, no matter what. Exactly right. So this is, if you're just joining us, this is the Hockey Writers Live. This is episode 9. Make sure you hit that like button on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss interviews like this. We are spending 30 good minutes with Penalty Box Radio's own Justin Bradford. And you mentioned him earlier, Justin. Eeli Tolvanen. Is this year the year that we could see him full-time up with the Predators?
I mean, he better do it or get off the pot. I mean, it's coming to that point. I'm not trying to pressure him in terms of that he's a bust, but in terms of this organization, what they need from him, he's got to be playing in the NHL.
Yeah.
Like they can't be patient because they need him to come up and perform. They don't have anybody else that can step up and potentially score some goals for them. So he has to be one of the guys that steps up to score. And yeah, there's pressure on him. Can they be patient? They can. I think they've been patient. He's only 21. I mean, he's still really young, and I think the pressure and the expectations from a lot of Predators fans bumped up because he came over to North America, and the expectation was, oh, he's going to come over and he's going to be a goal-scoring machine, and he's a first-round pick, and he's going to come over and score 20 goals in his first season. Well, it wasn't the case. He needed some seasoning, and he finally started putting it together with Milwaukee later in the season last year, and he has a heck of a shot. We've seen some of the highlights from him playing with Jokerit and what he can potentially do. Granted, he only has 9 points in 17 games with Jokerit, but I think Eeli Tolvanen, if he's put on a line with Matt Duchene, that can help make him successful, because what you hope for is that the opposition is doubling up someone else, leaving Tolvanen open in his sweet spot, which is very similar to Ovechkin's, at the top of the faceoff circle, and hopefully he can release, because Tolvanen has one of the best releases that I've seen. It's a very quick release and a very deadly shot, but he has to have space, and he's used to having space. Like in Europe, he has more space on the ice. So in the NHL, we all know it's a lot more condensed. Defenders are so much better. Forwards are so much better at defending other forwards as well. There's a lot less time and space available when you get to the best league in the world. He's got to be able to adjust to that. And so it's really good that the Predators, as plenty of other teams, loaned a lot of their young players off to leagues in Europe to get them ready for training camp. So when they come to camp, it's not okay, let's get ready for the season. It's okay, wheels are blazing, ready to go. You've been playing for a couple months now. You've got to be ready to roll, because the expectations are that much higher, because they need him to perform. And I'm not saying it has to be a 30, 40-point season from Tolvanen, but he's got to be able to score some timely goals. They need to put him in position to succeed, like on the power play. You got to give some of these young players an opportunity in the power play, because that's where they can build confidence as well and have more space. So put some deadly weapons out from the power play, and I'm very curious to see what happens with him.
Yeah, and there's a handful of players around the league, and Tolvanen's one of them. I think of a player like Josh Hosang. Like, the talent is there, but it might be a last chance situation for a lot of players. So we'll see if they're able to answer the call. You mentioned earlier both Luke Kunin and Matt Benning. They're both newer to the team. Just can you talk about why were the Predators interested in them, and how will they fit on the team?
I think for Luke Kunin, what attracted them to him is that he's basically a younger version of Nick Bonino in terms of what the expectations are. He's also American, so American for American, and David Poile loves having some Americans on the team as well. But he's young. He went through the system with the USNTDP, and he's kind of continued to grow in his role. I mean, last year having 31 points, 63 games, that's not too shabby, especially for his age. But his advanced stats don't always look the best. So what you would hope for is that he comes to a team like Nashville, and maybe he's given a role with more responsibility, or maybe he's put in a better position, a better system that'll help him be more successful. That's obviously the hope. So I see him fluctuating in the middle six, somewhere between the second and the third line, depending on situations and everything. They still need to obviously sign him. And I think a comparable contract is going to be like the one we saw with Rope Hintz. It's going to be very comparable, like the 3.15 mil cap hit. I think he's getting in 3 years. I think that's probably going to be somewhere around there where we can base things off of for Luke Kunin. I like it. Granted, the Predators did have to give something up for him, and he's an RFA and everything, but I like how they decided to go younger. It's funny that it's another trade with Minnesota, even though some things have changed, trading within the division. But I think David Poile likes getting those guys that played with the NTDP, played some college hockey as well, and have shown the progression of that type of player. And I'm assuming they're going to put him in some roles too that'll challenge him and help him be a better player. Matt Benning, what I like about him, again, the team getting younger as well. Benning can play a little bit on the edge too. He has a lot of experience already just between the two leagues of the AHL and the NHL, and is giving him an opportunity now to play some bigger time hockey, probably with more minutes, I'd almost expect. But I like the signing because I think it solidifies better the third pairing, better than what they had with Dan Hamhuis and Yannick Weber. Like that's just and that's not setting the highest standard. I mean, it isn't. So that's one of those things where it's like, did they get a little bit better in the third pairing? Yeah, it didn't take much. Did they get younger? Yes, it didn't take much. Now, granted, Dan Hamhuis, he was at retirement age, so nothing against him. He had a very solid career. Yannick Weber had been a solid depth defenseman as well, but it was time to move on and get a little bit younger. And Benning, only being 26 years old, definitely does that. So I really do like that signing as well. Just same thing with Mark Borowiecki, adding a little bit more heat on there. I doubt that Borowiecki will play all the games for a full season, but I think he'll play the majority of them, as they'll probably get turn some time. But I really do like what they did in the third pairing, and I think that definitely boosts them up and eases a little bit of the tension on the second pairing of Fabro and Ekholm, which did not have the best season by far this year. I mean, not many Predators did. Roman Josi had a good season. There's a lot of players that underperformed for the Nashville Predators. Roman Josi was one of them. And so solidifying that third pairing is going to help ease a little bit to give them a few more minutes and also help on the penalty kill too.
So speaking of the youth, though, and I know you follow prospects pretty closely as well, the Predators have two guys in particular. One I'm familiar with his time in the OHL, Philip Tomasino, and the other one, the Predators drafted in the first round this year because you knew that someone was going to take the goalie, and the Predators took the goalie and Yaro Askarov. So just your overall thoughts on them, just give everybody a sense of how excited the Predators are in each of them and just how high is their upside.
Oh, this organization is very, very excited about both of them. When Askarov, I'll start with Askarov at the draft, because it started to play out where people started saying, I think the Predators should take Yaroslav Askarov. And a couple friends that I know that obviously are prospect writers and follow along prospects big time, like, Askarov makes sense for the Predators, just given the age discrepancies between the different goalies and what he could do for that organization, building from the crease and forward. And I started to catch on a little bit more. And then as the pieces started to fall in place during the draft, went, oh, there's one off the board. There's one off the board. Oh, my God, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. They're going to do it. And Twitter starts heating up. Nashville Predators Twitter starts heating up. They're going, uh-oh, it's going to happen. They did it. By God, they did it. And then you see Twitter explode. And so later on, I asked General Manager David Poyle, were you a little surprised he was there when he says, he the one that you wanted? And Poyle responded that he was the one at the top of their board. He's the player that they wanted in this draft. And he was fielding phone calls from other teams trying to get the Predators to move back so they could take him. So that shows how coveted he was, and kind of shocked some other teams didn't take Askarov, especially with what we've been seeing out of him playing in Russia already, whether it's in junior camp or in the KHL he's been able to do. And it's still 2 years away before he comes to North America, given his contract status. So he is one of those players, if he makes it, I think it's a good gamble. And as we all know, draft picks are always gambles. You just never know. Exactly. I think that's a very good gamble of a draft pick there, because if he turns into the player they expect him to be, then that's going to solidify the Nashville net where they don't have to worry about it for a long period of time. And it's a few years away. So it still gives Jussi Saros and still gives Connor Ingram opportunities to be starters potentially for a little while you let him get ready. But from what we're seeing, maybe he's going to be ready in exactly 2 years, and then you're going to have a great controversy in net, potentially, with what happens, depending on the expansion draft or whatever happens there when we get to that point. But I know they're very excited about Askarov, and it helps, too, because he has some players as well, connections with the Nashville Predators, like Yakov Trenin has been around him, and I also know Yegor Afanasyev is very familiar with him as well. So having some of those Russian connections to the organization obviously helps, just as we know it helps when you have Swedes and Finns being able to coordinate and help each other out. It just helps in that transition process. Philip Tomasino, this kid has a lot of pressure on him, and not as much as Eli Tolvanen right now, because it's only his second year coming into the organization. But I think there's a lot of pressure on him because he's put it on himself too. He wants to be with this team for this season. And it kind of helps with the season not starting until after the new year. It means he gets to be in World Juniors if he makes the cut, which I hope to God he makes the cut. Just given his performance, 100-point season last year. So there's a lot of good expectations on him. I think for him, what it's going to be is just continue to beef up and get a little bit bigger, because obviously he can create space. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people saw the highlight today of his spinorama and what he's able to do and for Team Canada, the red-white games that he's been having there too. But he is a terrific talent. It's great because him and Afanasyev have become friends. So they're in the same draft class and obviously familiar with playing each other a few times. I think they're roommates for prospect camp, for development camp. And so there's a little bit of trash talking that goes on. a little bit too, which is just fun to see that they obviously respect each other a lot. And
Yeah.
Afanasyev likes to trash talk me on Twitter, just bragging about his dinner. Uh, posting pictures of borscht and asking where my steaks are. He is. Okay. I'll include this. Igor Afanasyev, if he makes it to the big leagues and he makes it to the NHL, he's instantly going to become a fan favorite of so many people because of his personality.
Oh yeah,
he has 100%. A fantastic, great personality. He loves to make jokes. He loves to crack jokes. He kind of reminds me of Ovechkin with some one-liners that he can have. But he just is a fun-loving dude, and that guy kills me in such a great way. So I think there's a few prospects for the Predators that really should excite people. They still, though, have a lot of work to do because they sold so much in years past that to build that cupboard up, it's going to take years to restock.
Yep. I got to follow Afanasyev in Windsor, and 100%. Dude is amazing. Great little interview. Those one-liners. Yeah, he's going to be a fun one when he gets up to Nashville. We got a couple more for Justin here. So at the end of the day, Justin, what would you say your confidence level on the Predators is? I know there still could be moves to be made depending on how things go, like Tampa has to shed the cap and stuff like that. But how excited are you about the prospects for just this upcoming season?
This upcoming season, especially because we know it's going to be a weird one with some different divisions. I mean, potentially you're going to have Nashville and Columbus being division rivals again.
That's right.
So that happens. It's going to be interesting. Plus, I know there's been the exchange of potentially Pittsburgh being in there or Carolina. Kind of depends on who we're talking to. But we all pretty much know for the most part that the old Central Division is going to be there, plus the Florida teams, and then one more. Yep. So it's going to be very interesting. And so given that case, it's going to make it tough because you have Tampa being Tampa, even though they've gotten rid of plenty, they're still Tampa. St. Louis, playoff team. Columbus should be a playoff team. Chicago's going to be right on the cusp. So, but if that's the case with the Central as we potentially see it, Nashville should be a playoff team. But the prospect of them going far in the playoffs, I just don't see it right now. So my confidence level is that they're in a retooling, which is totally okay that you should retool. They're definitely not in a rebuild, because in a rebuild, we would have seen core players traded. And that's the big thing to correct folks, because people say, oh, they're rebuilding. Whoa. You would have seen like a Ryan Ellis traded. You would have seen a Forsberg or Arvidsson traded. You would have seen Johansson potentially traded. You would have seen so much more, like the fire sale that happened in 2007 for the Predators when they got rid of Hartnell, Timonen, Vokun, core players gone. This was not that case. But I still think that they can make the playoffs, but I just don't see the prospect of them going that far unless something catches fire, a goaltender catches fire, like Saros just all of a sudden just lights it up and tears it up in net, or you have a guy like Forsberg or Arvidsson just go ahead and push for 40 goals. I just don't see that happening. I still think they can make the playoffs. Like I've said, some of these young guys, if they all of a sudden just say, hey, I'm going to have a 30, 35-point season, okay, but it's going to be very difficult given the teams they have to play. But I think right now David Pohl's just trying to keep that window just a little bit open to see what they can do. But given what other teams have done, like Colorado, like Dallas, it's going to make it very difficult in terms of the future for the Predators to kind of break through.
Absolutely. And I just want to end this on this, Justin. Not often that we get an author on the show like this, and you are one, and you have a good book out there called The Making of Smashville. Just want to give you a little bit of time, just, how did that come about, and how can fans possibly get a copy of it?
Sure. So it's called Nashville Predators, The Making of Smashville. It came out a few years ago, but it is the complete history of the Nashville Predators up until basically the Peter Laviolette era, which was a good time to go with history, if the changing of the guard with Barry Trotz leaving. So it goes all the way back from the history, a little bit of hockey in Nashville, but especially covering how the Predators came to be as an expansion team, from what teams they tried to get to move to Nashville to the Predators actually being an expansion club, how they came up with the name, plenty of interviews and anecdotes and stories. So all these different types of fun stories from former players, former coaches, which is really the fun part of this, plus lots of great pictures as well. It's probably a good 2-day read. It's a very quick read. I mean, it's only been around for a little over 20 years. So there's not as much history there for Nashville, but it makes a great stocking stuffer. I will say that. It's a perfect stocking stuffer. It's on Amazon and any place where books are sold. So you can get it retail at Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, any place like that. And just, it was a lot of fun putting together, and hope people enjoy it.
Well, Justin, it was a lot of fun having you on. We really appreciate you taking time out of your night to join us. And again, follow him on Twitter at Justin B. Bradford. When his show comes back on the air on 102.5 ESPN, make sure you give him a listen. Justin, thanks for the time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Yep, you do the same. Thank you. That was Justin Bradford talking Nashville Predators here on the Hockey Writers Live, episode 9, 30 good minutes. A great interview. I mean, just everything that he's involved with, being on the radio and, being a commissioner in a league and doing so much with high school hockey, and then doing so much too for helping youth out as well and helping people find an opportunity in hockey. So again, one of the better guys out there, highly recommend him. So in the meantime, as we transition toward our panel, just again, another reminder, make sure you hit that like button on Facebook. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube. As I tell you what, we've got some really good interviews coming up here. We got some really good panels, and I might even sweeten the pot too. Like with maybe a little random giveaway here or there, like you interested in like a $5 or $10 gift card. Make sure you hit and follow us, because you're getting some good opportunity here. So let's jump into the panel now. So joining us tonight, we're going to have 4 members of our Montreal Canadiens panel, and we're going to introduce them here. We're going to start with Ryan Szporer. Ryan, welcome to the panel.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you, Ryan? There you are.
I'm
next, we're going to introduce Melissa Boyd to the panel. Hello, Melissa.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. And next we have Blain Potvin joining the panel. Hello, Blain.
Hi. How's it
There
going?
he is. Hello. Good. Thank you. And finally, Trege Wilson makes the 4th member of our Montreal panel tonight. Hello, Trege.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Good. Thank you. So never a dull moment with the Montreal Canadiens. Figured this would be a great time to really look into some certain aspects. So Ryan, we'll start with you on this. Many, many storylines that I could go after with the Montreal Canadiens. But if there's one in particular that will be worth watching, maybe for a casual fan, what would you say that big storyline is?
General Manager Mark Bergevin's offseason acquisitions, I would say, specifically backup goalie Jake Allen. I mean, it's probably a surprise to probably go with a backup who's probably only going to get in like 30 games over the course of a 82-game season if it goes that far. But the idea is that if Allen is that 1B goalie that everyone is hoping he will be, he should help to keep Carey Price rested. And if Carey Price is rested, we saw what he was capable of after a 5-month layoff leading into the playoffs. I think he had a league-leading 1.78 goals against average, something along those lines, over the course of the 10 postseason games he got in. So the idea is if Jake Allen keeps him rested, hopefully Carey Price is able to turn back the clock a little bit.
Melissa, what's the storyline you're going to be watching?
I think the continued evolution of our 2 young centers, Suzuki and Kotkaniemi. To me, it's probably the most crucial aspect of the team for this year, because essentially I think Bergevin decided to make these moves this offseason based on their play in the postseason. I think he sort of felt like it was time to sort of move ahead and take the next step forward. So their play is going to be very key, and they have to continue to progress. If this team on paper is going to put up the points we think they will in the standings.
Blain, where do you got your eyes on for a storyline?
I think Josh Anderson is going to probably be the big story this year to follow. Being the big trade acquisition, moving Max Domi out to Columbus and bringing in what should be the first real power forward for the Canadiens since Eric Cole left town. I can guarantee fans are going to be all over that player. If he can't get past his injury from last year with his shoulder, then and put up points that he did the season before that, then I can see fans turning on him in a hurry, especially considering that 7-year deal that went to go keep him. The issue for him is not his cap hit, but his term, especially after that injury. I know he's a young player, and there's some high hopes that he could be the next Tom Wilson type. but until he actually provides that level of play in Montreal, there's going to be a lot of question marks, and there's going to be people waiting in the wings if he can't do it.
Well, he says he's healthy. I mean, he could have played in the next round had the Blue Jackets advanced past the Lightning. So it's really up to him now to prove it. Trege, what about you for a storyline?
Mine was going to be Alexander Romanov. Actually, it was going to be Josh Anderson, but Blain stole it from me. Like he usually does. But it's going to be Alexander Romanov. Bergevin is putting all his eggs in a basket with Romanov. He's so confident that he's going to be a contributing defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens this season that he was willing to burn a year of his entry-level contract just to have him practice. So if Romanov is the player that everyone's hoping he's going to be and the team thinks he's going to be, then he will probably climb up that ladder of defense, and you may even see him on the left side with Weber. I'm not saying that's what should happen. I'm saying if he progresses the way everyone thinks he's going to progress, and judging from what I hear from everyone, really, even for his short minutes in the KHL, he's a dominant player on the ice. And if he can put that onto the Habs, then there's no reason. I mean, if Victor Mete can play top line minutes with Weber, there's no reason why Alexander Romanov can't.
There you go. So, Melissa, we'll go to the next question. We'll start with you here.
Mm-hmm.
So, give you both sides of the story. Give us the biggest reason that fans should be optimistic about the Montreal Canadiens this year, and then give us the biggest reason why the fans should be worried about the Montreal Canadiens this season.
Yeah, well, actually, I think my positive and negative sort of go hand in hand kind of thing. I think the positive, well, is pretty obvious. I mean, we have, Bergevin made major additions this offseason. It's probably been his best offseason so far I think he's at 8 years now as GM, where he's been the most aggressive as well. So I think just the new sort of dynamic of the lineup, forwards, D, and goalie, he filled a lot of holes, a lot of depth. So I think we're a well-balanced team. We're a team with identity. We're within identity. We're going to be really tough to play against. And so I think that's a reason for optimism for sure. We've improved, on paper, nobody can argue that we've improved. I think the NHL, the Athletic had a survey that said basically Montreal had the best offseason of any team. And I think the worry, what kind of goes with that a bit too, is that, depending how many games they play, it may take a while for all these new guys to come in and gel together. So hopefully it doesn't take too long or that there is some chemistry there because, if it takes them 30 games and they're only playing 60, well, it's going to be tough. And I think also, defense is still a question mark. It was our weak point last year as well. And basically the only change that was made, well, Romanov, which is a great addition, but also and Edmondson. So I think it's still a cause for concern for sure.
Blain, your optimistic viewpoint, and then maybe one reason for worry.
Optimistic, the team depth with the new additions. The team has the most depth it's had in maybe a decade on paper. So if all the new additions actually produce at a reasonable rate and the returning players produce at a reasonable rate, we're not talking career highs, but basic expectations, 20, 25 goals for guys like Tatar and Anderson, even Gallagher. If they can have that many, they can have as many as 7 20-goal scorers on this team based on the expectations. So if they can get that, that would be an excellent team depth. I think, Melissa, you nailed the defense there. They finished 19th in the league last year. And I know the hope is that adding Edmondson and Romanov would improve on that, and with the depth, create a better goal differential. Just because the Canadiens don't have that star player, they don't have that game changer that can go out and score a goal, which kind of brings me to my downside a little bit, and that's the team health. Last year we saw what happens when they had a few injuries occur at the same time. That depth took a major hit. If that happened again in a shortened season, the expectations that the fans have, all that goodwill will go right out the door if this team cannot recover from those injuries.
Treg, what do you think?
Optimism. I'm going to say I have to agree with Blain. The depth on the team. I believe this team is closer before the moves to the 96-point team 2 years ago than it was the 71-point team this year. I think the big reason for that was the depth. Once they had a few players injured, it all kind of went to crap. And so I think now that they have the depth to cover up for that injuries, because every team has injuries, but if you don't have the depth to cover it, then you're lost. So my optimism is that, plus the moves that were made. There's no reason why this team shouldn't make the playoffs, and I think that is also what worries me, because the team was put together to play Julian's system. If you look at the way the team is built, it's built for the coach, Claude Julien. So if this team doesn't succeed, how long does Bergevin wait before he makes the change behind the bench? Because we all know he likes to be pretty loyal to his coaches. So that's my worry. My worry is the team is made for the coach. Therefore, if you put the two together, it should be a very successful team. However, in a 60-game season, how long do we wait before, if it's going off the rails, how long do we wait to make the change?
Ryan, give you the last word on optimism and worry.
Sure. I think, put simply, I'm optimistic based primarily on the postseason that the Canadiens had. Obviously, everyone knows of their struggles prior to the hiatus, but after it, they upset the Pittsburgh Penguins, obviously, in the play-in round, and then they took the Philadelphia Flyers, who had been the number one seed after the round-robin round and had been seen as dark horses for the Stanley Cup heading into it. They took them to 6 games, and it was really, in my view, a series that could have gone either way. And even though it went to only 6 games, the Canadiens, even though they got shut out twice, they outscored the Flyers, I think 13-11 over the course of the 6 games, and they outshot them in 5 of the 6 games. So I think if the Canadiens obviously only got better this offseason, as Blain said, on paper. So who knows how that turns out, but I do know in theory that they should be a force with which to be reckoned. As for my source of not so much optimism, this team is obviously built around Carey Price in net and Shea Weber on the back end. And while they had Price had a great postseason and Shea Weber hasn't been bad by any stretch of the imagination, they are getting up there. Weber is 35, Price is 33, and age curves are notoriously haphazard come the mid-30s. So I'm cautiously optimistic with regard to Price because of the Allen acquisition, as I mentioned earlier. And with regard to Weber, again, cautiously optimistic because he hasn't shown so much decline up to now. But again, if those guys go, then Canadiens are screwed.
Now, fans, in case you're just joining us, it's about 8:45 on the East Coast, and this is episode 9 of the Hockey Writers Live on Facebook and YouTube. I am your host, Mark Scheig, and we've got our 4 writers from the Montreal Canadiens here: Ryan Szporer, Melissa Boyd, Blain Potvin, and Trege Wilson. So for question 3, we're going to start with Blain on this one. You know, a lot of talk out there about an all-Canadian division, and I'm just really curious to know, because you're going to be playing the Leafs, you're going to be playing Ottawa, you're going to be playing Vancouver, Calgary, and on and on and on, pretty much throughout the whole year if it works out like that. How do you think the Canadiens will actually fare in that kind of a division setup?
It's not going to be an easy division by any means. The 2 most improved teams this offseason seem to be the Canadiens and the Flames. And I think those 2 teams are going to go head-to-head quite a bit for the lead in the division. I don't think either one may end up there. Toronto has a good chance that they could be there, but I think the Canadiens are in the fight. I think they can pull off a playoff spot, and it's going to make some great hockey. There's going to be some new rivalries built. I mean, Ottawa and Montreal have one. Toronto and Montreal, the rivalry's kind of there, and it'll build. But teams like Winnipeg and Calgary, I think, are going to be the big rivalry for the Canadiens this season, if there is a Canadian division.
Yeah.
But all that said, I think the Canadiens are going to do well if they stay healthy and everyone produces at the rate they should. Especially with Allen. I mean, Ryan made an excellent point on Jake Allen. He's got a lot of experience playing against these Western teams, having played in St. Louis for many years. So he's going to be probably relied on quite a bit to play a lot of those Western games to give Price the rest that he needs. So if everything works out, Canadiens are in it.
Definitely a big gift. Treg, what do you think?
I think this is going to be a tough division, and I know if you look at Sportsnet's rankings, they have the Habs in 6th, I think, or 5th, near the bottom, just ahead of Ottawa. And I think that's a good thing for the Habs because everyone's underestimating them. I agree with Blain. Calgary and Montreal, probably the most improved teams going into this season. I don't think Vancouver and Toronto really improved. I think Vancouver actually got worse. Ottawa's going to be Ottawa. I say top 3. I don't know who's going to finish first, second, or third because I don't think it's going to be I don't think there's going to be any gaps. It's going to be, if you go on a losing streak, that could be your season. So like an 8-game losing streak. Let's just throw that number out there.
Or 2 of them.
Or 2 of them. If you go on one of those, you're done. So yeah, I'll say top 3 is where I think they're going to finish. But I wouldn't be surprised if they finish 4th or 5th, just because the division's going to be so tough.
Ryan, do you foresee a top 3 for the Canadiens if it's an all-Canadian division?
I would say a top 2. I'm actually cautiously optimistic we might have a chance at winning based on Bergevin's offseason acquisitions. I feel as though they do have the depth. If they can stay healthy, then a division championship is definitely a possibility. I mean, and may I just be the first to say, thank God the Detroit Red Wings are no longer in the division. After they swept the Canadiens in the regular season last year. So Canadiens don't have to prepare for the dreaded Red Wings anymore. I feel as though it would come down to the Oilers and the Canadiens because, as Treg said, I don't believe the Maple Leafs improved all that much. And while they have the offensive talent, I don't believe that their goaltending is up to the same caliber as Montreal. And I think even though they improved on the back end, there's still a few question marks there. With regard to the Edmonton Oilers, I do believe that, Connor McDavid is the X factor. And, he, along with Draisaitl, obviously, who just won the Hart Memorial Trophy, it's hard to envision. There have been a lot of changes, but last year the Canadiens were 10-3-2 against Canadian teams. So maybe it's a matter of them playing up to the competition and, having that mindset, for, playing another Canadian team. Maybe they're able to do that. I feel as though the Canadiens are right there. And I'm, like I said before, based on their postseason performance, I'm optimistic.
So what Ryan is saying is they don't have to face Jonathan Bernier this year, so it's all good moving forward. That's what I'm hearing.
Just to add to your 10-3-2, the Canadiens are 27-11-3 in the last 3 years against Canadian teams. So
there you go.
It's a huge stat. It's a great stat, actually. Melissa, give you the final word here on the all-Canadian division and the Canadiens' chances.
Yeah, I'm glad these guys brought all the stats because I was feeling like should have brought some, but they got me covered, so it's good. Yeah, I agree. I think top 3 as well. I think that it's funny, I think, because the Canadiens are kind of built like a Western Conference team almost, with their speed and their size. And yeah, the guys mentioned it before too, like Allen has played, his career in the Western Conference. So is Tyler Toffoli. So I think that's going to help a lot. And I think just the fact that we're going to get to play Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton, who we match up well against, generally speaking, I think is going to be good for them. So I agree, top 3 in the division.
All right, Treg, we'll start our next question with you this time. And just, I guess more for the casual fan that will occasionally tune into a Canadiens game, and you guys get to follow them closely. So my question for you is, who is the one Montreal player that you feel like is the most underappreciated given everything that they do? Maybe they don't necessarily hit the score sheet or something like that. Just who is that underrated player for you and why?
Victor, no, just kidding. Artturi Lehkonen. I think Artturi Lehkonen is the most underrated, probably the most crapped on player on the Montreal Canadiens. I think it had to do with his 18-goal rookie season that kind of ruined it for his entire career so far. Artturi Lehkonen is not a goal scorer. He is a two-way forward that will help shut down at least. He won't play against the top line because we all know Danault, Tatar, and them are against the top line, but he is the guy. He's a perfect third-line winger. He can move up into the top 6 if you need him to. He can't hit the broadside of a barn sometimes, but it's all his little things he does in the game defensively and offensively that people don't really notice unless they're really watching. Take the 18-goal season out of your head because he's not an 18-goal scorer. I'll say 12 to 15, and that's being kind, but that's not his game. His game is a two-way game. His game is to help shut down players, play the penalty kill, and be a great defensive forward.
All right, Ryan, what do you think about the most underappreciated Hab in your mind?
You actually stole mine. I was going to say Lehkonen too. Yeah, I mean, not much to add to that except for the fact that I agree he's not going to be a big goal scorer, but he does contribute offensively much more than people give him credit for. Why people don't seem to notice it as much as they should is because he doesn't get as much ice time as, like the Tatars, the Dadons, the Gallaghers. But if you look at per 60 minutes, he's actually ranked 4th in terms of points per 60 minutes with 1.78, below those top 3 guys. And he's also 3rd in shots per 60 minutes. So he's doing his job. He's just not putting the puck in the net as much as he should. But yeah,
just kind of an important job. But Melissa, who is your most underrated Hab?
Well, I was gonna go 3 for 3 here and say Lehkonen as well. He was my first choice. But so I guess that means he's maybe not that underrated if we all
for the casual fan.
Well, for the casual fan, he might be.
Fans. So, but my second choice was this may seem a little bit off, but Ben Sherratt actually surprised me a lot in his first year in Montreal. He was, he started off slow first few games. You were like, "Ooh, I don't know about this free agent signing," and he became really a stalwart next to Weber, and it was the hole that we needed to fill. I don't think he should be filling it on a permanent basis, but that's another story, another issue. But I think he brought a lot more to the table than I thought he was going to, and he was he looked good there, and they were dominant in the postseason, especially against Pittsburgh. And don't forget, Lehkonen also did score the series-winning goal against Pittsburgh, so he scored when it mattered. So, but yeah, so that would be my choice.
Blain, you get the final word on this one.
Victor Mete. No, that's just for Treg. No, I mean I would go with Lehkonen as well, but just to go against the grain a little bit, I would say maybe Joel Armia could be in that mix. Here's a guy who has all that skill. He creates puck possession play. He uses his body, his frame to protect the puck. He can play the cycle. He can pick up. He can dig the pucks out of the corner. He does go to the net a little bit. He doesn't score as much as you would have thought for someone who was picked in the middle of the first round by Buffalo years back. But he does have that skill set to become a 20-goal scorer if he's played enough or in the right situations. But in Montreal, I don't think he's going to see that. So I think his biggest attribute that fans should look to is his mentorship for Kotkaniemi. He's kind of a stabilizing force for Kotkaniemi, a touchstone from home, being that he was Kotkaniemi's favorite player growing up, and now he's more than likely going to play on his wing. So that aspect of Armia's game, I think, is what's really going to bring his value up to the Canadiens, and maybe that makes him in the mix for that underrated portion. But yeah, by far Lehkonen.
Just to bring up Armia, if he played his last 2 seasons, if he played a full season, would have been a 20-goal scorer. He was on pace for 20 goals each season. Just throw that in there.
So as someone who's in the States and does occasionally watch the Canadiens when the Blue Jackets don't play, let's say, somebody that I've always felt was underrated just because I don't think enough fans realize how good he was, especially defensively, is Philippe Deneau. Now, what I'll be really curious to see, though, is how he plays, given what he said about his role and a contract kind of hanging over him. Be really curious to see if he can keep that up. But he's somebody that I've always appreciated from a distance just because he's really good defensively. And I just don't think enough people here in the States realize that. So just wanted to call that out. So got 2 more questions for our panel. So we'll go back to Ryan for this one. So Ryan, we're going to have you perform the role of Marc Bergevin for a minute. What one move do you wish that the Montreal Canadiens made this offseason, and why?
Before I answer that, I'd just like to self-correct myself. The stats I cited for Lehkonen, they were at 5-on-5, not all overall. So with regard to the question, I would have personally loved Bergevin to have signed Torrey Krug to play with Shea Weber. I know that wasn't necessarily a possibility because maybe Krug doesn't want to play for the Canadiens and, such and such. And if Bergevin had signed Krug, he wouldn't have had the cap space to sign Tyler Toffoli, which is probably one of the best signings anyone made this free agent offseason, I think. So I can't really blame Bergevin all that much. I do think that the Canadiens are lacking a number 2 defenseman. And I think the hope is that Romanov grows into that role. I'm not sure that's going to happen because he's only going to be 21 by the time the season starts. But it's a nice thought. I'm right there. But yeah, I would have liked an established veteran presence, puck-moving veteran presence to play with Weber.
Melissa, who would you have signed if you had the opportunity?
Same as Ryan. So puck-moving defenseman, either via free agency or trade. I think, we mentioned earlier that the team is built around Carey Price and Shea Weber. And he did a good job of helping out Carey this offseason by acquiring Jake Allen. But I still think since Weber's been with us, he hasn't had that solid D-man, partner. And yeah, we need some puck moving defensemen. Jeff Petrie is really the only guy that does it consistently. And I think it would help our offense to help our power play, help, generate in the offensive zone. So that would have been the move I would have liked him to do. Although it's tough to be critical because he did do a lot. So yeah.
Blain, what do you got?
I'm on board with Ryan and Melissa on upgrading a puck mover on the left side. I would have loved Krug as well, but realistically, I would have liked to have seen Shane Gothisbehere picked up by Bergevin. He would have been a little bit cheaper of a trade. His cap hit is reasonable, and it's about the same as a little bit more than what he's paying Edmondson now. And Edmondson is kind of a carbon copy of what he did with Sherratt the year before. They play the same kind of style, and they bring the same type of game. So I would have liked to have seen another puck mover added, because Melissa's right. Petry's the only true puck mover based on the definition used today. Other players like Romanov, they can move the puck, but they don't carry it like Petry would. And like Ryan said, he's only 20 right now. If anyone's hoping that he's a top line defenseman right off the top, they're going to be disappointed, because this is a young man that's going to take time to develop, and they're not going to rush him because they don't want to ruin his development. They're investing quite a bit into this young man. So picking up someone like Shane Gothisbehere, who could buy 3 years for him to develop while providing some puck moving, and not to mention he's a bit of a power play quarterback. And as it stands right now, the Canadiens don't have that on the blue line. So that would have been a big, big help on their power play, which we can all agree has been horrible the last few seasons.
And Treg, you get the final word.
Oh God, no.
And just to say, Blaine, Victor Mete is the best transitional defenseman that the Montreal Canadiens have right now. Just throwing it out there. That's the only thing he does. I would say I wouldn't have signed Josh Anderson to a 7-year contract. That's what I wouldn't have done. I agree. I was rooting for Torrey Krug this offseason to sign him. I agree with Ryan on that. I agree we needed a left-handed defenseman. I just don't think we could have afforded the right left-handed defenseman to get. Like, we needed a top 2 left-handed defenseman. We couldn't. If we would have got that, we wouldn't have gotten anybody else. Let's just say that. But I don't think I would have signed Josh Anderson to 7 years, especially not coming off the injury season that he had. Mark, you would know more about that than we would about Columbus. I don't mind the money. I just think the term is just way too long. That's what I would not have done this offseason.
I will quickly just give like 20 seconds on that. He was on a pace until the injury. I mean, the injury last year, he ended up scoring 1 goal. But before that, he was progressing up. We ended up having 27 goals the year before. He certainly has it. The speed element is there. If he's right, he's certainly a light version of Tom Wilson. I know one of you guys mentioned that earlier. So if he lives up to the billing and can play like that, the money on the front end of that is going to be a bargain. Yep. The concern, like you're bringing up, though, are like year 6 and 7. That could look very ugly depending on how it goes. So we'll see where it goes. So one final question for the panel here tonight. Melissa, we'll start with you. Just kind of a real simple yes, no, and a couple of words. Will the Montreal Canadiens make the playoffs? And then if you think they do, what is the one factor that you think gets them there? And otherwise, if they don't make it, why not?
Yes, they will. I think, it's kind of the stated goal. I know Bergevin says it every year. We get in the playoffs, anything can happen. But I think it's I don't want to say playoffs are bust, because I think Bergevin's job is pretty secure. I'm not sure about Julien, but it better be, yes, I think. Otherwise, there's going to be major changes, either with the roster or in management. And I think the key will be, like usual, I think the goaltending is going to be the key. If Carey can play like we know he's capable, and now we have Jake Allen to back him up, I think that's going to be the key in the end.
Blaine, what do you think?
I think they'll make the playoffs. We mentioned it with the placement in the Canadian division. We all feel that they're a top 3 team. So being a playoff team shouldn't us agreeing that they're a playoff team shouldn't surprise anyone. But once they're there, I think the team that Bergevin has been putting together is, like Melissa, you mentioned that they're built kind of like a Western Conference team. Mm-hmm. So if they are playing the playoffs in the format that they play now, where you play within your division before moving on to play versus other divisions, I think that's going to bode well for the Canadiens. So they may end up winning a couple of series. maybe one at the very least. If they can't win a series, then I agree that there's going to be some heads rolling. It might be coaching, it might be a couple of players moved off the roster. But yeah, there's going to be disappointment in Montreal if they don't win at least one series.
Kind of an optimistic bunch here so far. Treg, are you as optimistic as they are?
Yes. I think they'll make the playoffs. I think in that Canadian division, if they go with the top 4 teams, they can easily finish in the top 4. Well, I don't want to say easily, but I think they're better than at least 3 other teams. I think Julian's this last year of his contract, I believe, or next year.
They both have
one more after this one. Yeah. Okay. I think it'll be early on. If the team sputters out of the gate, then Julian has to go almost immediately, in my opinion. If he doesn't, then I think it's on. The team's built to make the playoffs. The team's built to be a playoff team. If they don't make the playoffs, it's on the coaching and management now at this point. So that's when you got to start looking at what are we doing wrong. If the power play doesn't work yet again, it's time to move on from the coaching staff.
And Ryan, you get the final word of the night.
It's like I planned. I agree wholeheartedly. I feel as though I won't even say, it's playoffs or bust. I feel it's like Blain alluded to, it's round 2 or bust. They need to show some progression because there are 2 years left in Bergevin's contract, and like he needs to show some progression relative to last year to this year. And if he doesn't, then what has he been doing for the last 8 years? He's got it. He's basically gotten 2 5-year plans, and he needs to be able to turn this team into a contender by the time his contract ends, or else I don't know how owner Jeff Molson can justify keeping him on personally. I feel as though he's done a good job this offseason. They showed a lot of traction this past postseason, and the only direction they can conceivably go based on those moves is to round 2 at the very least. And I think that's a realistic goal, and I envision them making it.
Like I said, this is an optimistic bunch, and I'm just going to end the night like this. I actually think they finish 5th. I know it's going to kind of shock some people and stuff like that. I like both Alberta teams. I like Vancouver. I like Toronto. So that puts them at 5th, in my opinion. And obviously, the season will have to play out and stuff like that. But yes, Montreal definitely has gotten better, but so has everybody else to a certain degree. And, kind of take a look at the rosters and stuff like that. We can go on and on and on here, but they're optimistic. I'm not so optimistic. It'll definitely be a fun season to watch in Montreal. Ryan, Melissa, Blain, Treg, thank you so much for joining the panel tonight, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
And fans, thank you for joining us for episode 9 tonight. Again, make sure you hit that like button on Facebook. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube. There may be some small giveaways coming up later. There's a little bit of incentive for you to do it. Just stay tuned here. You don't want to miss any of our panels. You don't want to miss any of our really good interviews. We had Justin Bradford earlier tonight. Wonderful. I'm going to share a link here shortly on Twitter about some of the stuff that he's doing. And again, we just cannot thank you all enough for taking time out of your day to join us. We're going to be back next Wednesday night at 8:00 with a guest and a panel to be determined. So stay tuned for that. Again, thanks for your time. Hope everybody in the States has a very happy, healthy, and safe Thanksgiving. Just make sure that you follow the experts and follow what the local government is saying. Because, at the end of the day, if we're going to get back, we all need to do our part. So thank you. Hope you have a good night. We'll talk to you next week.